Solar 2 is an ambient game in which you play as a celestial body attempting to grow in size by absorbing smaller items found throughout the cosmos. It's very similar to Katamari Damacy in terms of concept, but that's exactly where the comparison ends. So let's take a look at Solar 2 and find out why it has a review spot on this channel. The core mechanics of Solar 2 are movement, collection, and gravity. In essence, the entire game just consists of flying around the map, gathering up objects smaller than yourself and then absorbing them to increase mass, until eventually you level up into a new form. Eventually you'll max out your mass and, well, I won't spoil it for you. Suffice to say, you win! Tension and conflict come in several forms. Firstly, after the game's initial asteroid stage, hitting pretty much anything will actually cause you to lose mass, so you want to navigate very carefully. The controls have momentum, which makes this a little bit harder, but with a little bit of practice you can compensate for it quite easily, provided that you don't go up to ludicrous speed or, God forbid, all the way to plaid. But the momentum mechanic is also joined by another little foil, and that's gravity. Gravity in Solar 2 is a bit more of an abstract game mechanic rather than a simulation, but it does have a significant impact on the game, especially as you start building the more massive heavenly bodies. It works like this: objects close to you will move towards you. The closer they are, the faster they will do so. Likewise, you are also affected by the gravity of other objects. Getting close to a star, for example, can be very dangerous, especially if you're playing as a star too. Chief reason being that both stars will exert gravity on each other and both will be moved towards each other, dramatically increasing the likelihood of collision. When planets pass though, the gravity they exert on each other is usually pretty weak. You might have to make a course correction, but it's unlikely to kill you. Gravity is also your primary means of expansion. In the first stage of the game as an asteroid, as I mentioned, you just fly around, bash into other asteroids, and you can gain mass. But if you become large enough, then you become a planet. Now asteroid impacts cause you to actually lose mass. So instead, you must capture asteroids in your gravity well so that they start to orbit your planet. After that, you can either grow the asteroid by ramming it into other asteroids, which also has the risk of knocking it out of your orbit and off into the big black. You have to go chasing after the bloody thing or just write it off. Or you can absorb it and add its collected mass to your own. This trend continues as you advance further up the mass progression tree, and you can build some very interesting and cool orbital systems with it. So that's how the game works: careful positioning with intentionally clunky control complicated by gravity effects. There's also life, which is an interesting twist on the game. Get a planet large enough and eventually life will start to evolve on it. Once it has, then it will give you a shield to help protect from impacts and start spawning point defense lasers on the planet's surface. As if that wasn't enough, the planet will also start to build spaceships that can help defend you from hostiles. Of course, life isn't all sunshine and roses. If you get hit directly by an asteroid, then all life will be wiped out and you'll have to start again. If the shield takes the hit, then your native life forms will understandably become quite concerned, and vent that concern all over nearby stellar debris in the form of laser fire, making trying to collect mass a bit of a problem. Did I say hostiles? Why yes I did. These are the Reds, who are life forms that evolved on other planets, and the Whites, life forms that have lost their planets. There's no negotiation or anything like that, and these guys will simply try to blow you up. Nice types. Life can defend you, but more often than not your only weapon is, well, yourself. Or alternatively, the less important stuff that's orbiting you. There are a number of missions available too. These are not really the main focus of the game, but rather pace changes for use if you want to try out something a little bit different. They can be interesting, but there's nothing really to write home about. A question I feel is often important in game design is, why is the player trying to advance? In a good game, a combination of mechanical rewards and narrative impetus keeps the player wanting to play. In Solar 2, I wanted to know what would happen. I wanted to see what objects I could turn into. I wanted to experience using gravity to destroy objects that had previously annoyed me. I wanted to obliterate trinary star systems. I wanted to create a solar system teeming with life that would completely roll over any other hostile life forms. Exploration, curiosity, even the occasional bit of wonder. But more than that, for me, Solar 2 was the right game at the right time. Solar 2 isn't complex, it's not deep. Its soundtrack is really solid and the visuals are decent enough, but not all that impressive. What it does well is to engage just enough of your brain to keep you focused on the game, but not so much as to actually tax you or challenge you in any severe way. A few years ago I was working in Liverpool and living on Anglesey. I don't own a car, and I didn't back then either. I was commuting from Anglesey to Liverpool every day by train. I was getting back after 11 o'clock at night, and I needed to be up for about 4 o'clock in the morning in order to make it into work. I kept this up for months. I didn't have the energy to play anything, but all that travelling wound me up quite a bit. I don't travel well at the best of times, so you combine that with a lack of sleep, the constant train journeys, the stress of work, and I was pretty agitated and restless by the time I got home. I needed something to take the edge off, and that something was Solar 2. I'd get home, I'd eat my takeaway dinner, and then I'd fire it up and play it for about, anywhere between half an hour and an hour. The demand meant that I had to stop thinking about other stuff and actually focus on the game. And after a little time in the game's sort of ambient headspace, I'd be calm enough to actually sleep. In many respects, I'd argue that Solar 2 is more of a toy than a game. There are mechanics, there is failure, but there is reward. I think at the end of the day, it is a game, but you don't really play it, you play with it. What I really like about Solar 2 is just the peculiar headspace that it puts you in. For many gamers that won't be enough, and that's understandable. The sort of response I have to Solar 2, that sort of meditative relaxation, is the sort of response that most people find a lot stronger in music. If it was a more expensive game, it wouldn't get a look in. It's just too basic, there's not really enough to keep you going. But for the cost of a good lunch, I actually find it a fantastic tool to have at my disposal, even if I don't regard it that highly as an actual game. So the final word on Solar 2 is that it can help create a relaxed, almost meditative, trance-like state if you're open to such things, or even, if you actually want to try such things. If you're not, then the low price might make you want to check it out anyways. It's still an interesting and very well realised concept, just don't expect too much from it. Solar 2 was developed and published by Muradai and is available on Steam for £6.99. I believe it also has releases on iOS and possibly Android. But for now, I'm Evis, signing off.